The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au. Welcome to the KRGS Doors podcast. I'm your host, Drew Blackman. The aim of our podcast is to talk to cool people with cool stories, whether it be our suppliers, customers, staff, other business owners, or people from different walks of life, and get to know them a bit better. If you're interested in coming on, drop us a line or email, or connect with us via Facebook, and we can have a chat to see what we can do. Today on episode 29 of the 12-month-old KRGS Doors podcast, I'm joined by KRGS Doors Managing Director Clayton Blackman and the Head of Consumer Business for the National Rugby League, Shaun McMartin. Shaun started his career in the corporate world as a finance professional, working for Merrill Lynch and Perpetual Limited. Before a restructure saw him looking for work, he got a 6-month contract at the Nrl and has turned that into a 7-year job, heading up the consumer business side of the game. This part of the Nrl looks after all the main events such as State of Origin, Magic Round and the Grand Final. Shaun discusses the Nrl as a business, the links between the clubs and head office, and we find out why it costs $40 for a pie, chips and a beer at the footy. I will also let you in on our next episode's guest, but for now, please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Shaun McMartin.
If this doesn't turn you on, folks, you haven't got a switch.
Shaun, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. What is the Shaun McMartin story?
Thanks very much for inviting me here today, gentlemen. The Shaun McMartin story, well, I'm a born and bred and grew up in Sydney southwest. I grew up in Chipping Norton. I went through to Newbridge Heights Public School is where I started when I was 4. Went through to Moorebank High, which was an exciting place. I understand now it's a selective school. I can comfortably say it wasn't a selective school when I was going there, but plenty of fine people came out of that school. So from there, I played as a kid. I played a hell of a lot of sport. So I absolutely loved sport. As you can see by the way I walked in, I've clearly played a lot of sport in my life. I look very much like the Tin Man when I get around.
That body's been bashed up a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we won't go into all of those sorts of details, but and then from there, I worked out at school that my sporting capability was probably at best probably average, talking my capability up. So I knew that I was probably going to have to rely on my mind and not my body in order to make my way through this world. So I went to university and I did the main thing that I could do, which was add. So I was pretty handy at adding things up. So I did an economics degree.
So you can count past 20, mate, the 10 fingers and toes?
Just
yeah,
on a good
one.
day. On a good day.
I can get to 21 in the nude.
Being a footballer, I could go to 6. That was all I could just count to
again.
6 tackles. Yeah, that was enough.
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
That's all I needed.
Yep. So then from there, I became an accountant. So I joined up as a young fella at Coopers and Lybrand, which was a big accounting firm.
They're in the city?
They were in the city. They were in George Street, which was just opposite the movies, which I thought was fantastic. Being a Southwest boy and not getting into the city too often, I thought, how good's this?
It was an eye-opener.
Yeah, it was an eye-opener. There was the Pav Tav. The Pavilion Tavern was the local when I was at Cooper's. That was spent a few misspent evenings at the Pav Tav, but all in good fun. So I did that for 3 years. I very quickly worked out that chartered accounting was everything that it was cracked up to be, and decided I wanted to get out of there as quick as I could. And I went from there and basically sold the soul and went into investment banking. And I was a bean counter for Merrill Lynch. I'm not sure if you know those guys. Yes. They're a very interesting company. I absolutely loved working there.
How long were you there for, mate?
I was there for 12 years.
Yeah.
So I was in the finance function. I stayed there till I got to be the CFO, which was good fun. So I was the CFO around 30 years old or so.
Yeah.
Did that for a couple of years, and then I sort of had a look around and went, well, what do I do now? So I was like, what's next after the CFO? And I switched. I thought, I'll go try something different. I'll try my hand at something different. So I went into the investment banking team and became their chief operating officer, I think it was called. Might have been chief admin officer, actually. And it was a blend of sort of strategy, admin, and sort of project work, which was quite interesting. And I learned quite a bit about how investment banking operates from there when I was over on the other side of the business, which was good fun.
Yeah.
So I did that for about 3 years. And then I think you gentlemen remember 2007, where the investment banking industry itself started to slide down.
Would that been the GFC?
That might have been the one, and I think my organisation may have been right there at the forefront of pulling the plug out and making sure the entire industry went straight down the drain. So it was a very interesting period. Matter of fact, it was a fascinating period in which to be in that sector.
GFC 2007, King's Roller Grills and Shutters was born on that year. So if you're ever going to go into business and open up a small business, 2007, I can guarantee you, it was hard work.
That was the year to do it.
Oh, man, it was hard work, I'll tell you.
How did you go getting any finance and things like that? Was that tricky?
Well, that was a bit tough at the time, yeah, but you just had to roll with the punches. But, mate, if you're ever going to start a small business and come out the other side and survive, you know, once you've gone through that,
the only way's up.
You'll survive anything. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I was never worried about COVID.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was about to say, I mean, the last 12 months for small business.
COVID was like a speed hump.
Wow.
So, yeah, it wasn't an issue. But, yeah, back in the GFC, mate, yeah.
Yeah,
that was hard.
Fascinating time.
So it was hard time, 2007.
Yep. Yeah, so I left there, then joined up Perpetual, and was there for 6-7 years. Had an absolute ball, worked with some absolutely wonderful human beings, some of the best people on the planet, while I was at Perpetual. And then from there, I left Perpetual, not of my own accord. I was put into touch, which was...
Pardon the pun?
Yeah, I didn't mind it so much, and I thought it was a good pun. For there, I got the absolutely extraordinary opportunity to sign up at the NRL, which, after all those 20-odd years in financial services, it seemed like a natural fit.
You mentioned you went to Moorebank High School. Were you in the same year as the famous Jason Clare, who has been a past guest on our podcast here?
Jason and I were in the same year. I went to Moorebank. Jason went to Cabra High, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Jason and I first met when we were young blokes. We were about 12 or 13. And one of the many sports we all played as kids, we took up golf. And we played golf at Liverpool Golf Course, and we were cadets together. So we learned how to play the game. Jason was a lot better at golf than what I was. I had a horrible slice that I used to call, what do you call it, a fade? Yeah, I used to have a professional fade. It was just a fade that could go about 50
that wasn't something in your hair either. That was actually that was your golf shot.
Absolutely, unfortunately. So that always was a big limitation. And Jason and I, so we played golf together, and then while we were at university together, and he was studying, I think he'd studied law and arts.
He did.
And while I was doing my economics degree, we both started to work at Sizzler. So we worked up at Sizzler.
I remember him telling us the story about that, because he's been on the world famous KRGS Doors podcast as well.
Absolutely. I listened to his story. It was fascinating.
And, he did mention that he'd been on the and I'd felt a bit, what's the word I'm looking for, with the cheese bread, like he
nostalgic.
Yes, like that was just
absolutely. If you want the recipe, now that they're going into liquidation, I think it's appropriate. We're allowed to share some of their secret herbs.
It's like the 11 secret herbs and spices.
That's the one. Yeah, more than happy to share. So we worked at Sizzler together. Sizzlers actually have a very special place in my heart. It's where I met my bride.
Wow.
Was at Sizzler.
How romantic.
Oh, it was. the first moment where...
Caramar?
Caramar, that's right. Yeah, wow. Just up there near the
Put it on the
bridge.
map.
Oh, absolutely. So it's, romance bloomed.
Yeah,
right
I can
there.
Understand why she fell for you.
Over the dessert bar or something like that?
No, it was a lot more romantic than that. We were doing a where you took your order, that was called Cold Side at Sizzler. And those fridges where all those beautiful refreshments that come out of the beer section.
Yeah.
That they were two-way fridges, so you could open at one side and push them in from the other.
You weren't playing handsies through the fridge or something, were you?
It was something like that, yes. Because being a natural romantic, what I was doing, I was wiping my side of the window, and it gets quite wet with all of the condensation that's coming down. So Jenny was on the other side, and I threw it straight through and hit her right in the face.
Your side was fogging up, obviously.
So natural from the absolute get-go, and unbelievably, she decided to go out with me, and then from there, married with 3 kids.
Well, she's only human.
Yeah, she is. I do say that.
Yeah.
Yes. So your role at the NRL now is head of consumer business. So did you start in that role originally, and what does that role entail?
No, I didn't start in that role. The role I started in was as a project role, effectively, to come in, and when I joined the NRL, there was a lot of assets that the NRL wanted that were outside of the house, and they'd outsourced a lot of our functions. So part of when I first got there was how do we insource a lot of these functions and grow our earnings pool, and at the same time get our hands on these assets that were important to how the game would run, and what we believe with. I'm surrounded here with all these fantastic memories that you have of sport. How do we make sure some of those assets that are so important to the game and the history of the game, that they belong in the game?
Yeah.
So it was like, for example, one of those was the Immortals brand.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing brand.
Yeah.
Most sports around the world would kill for that brand, and we didn't own that brand. I mean, the people that created the brand did a wonderful job.
Is that Rugby League Week?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And they did a fantastic, the way they created that brand and the way that the mystique they put around it was wonderful. And when the organisation that didn't want to run Rugby League Week anymore, we stepped up and made sure we got our hands on that brand. It's wonderful. We've rolled it in, and out of that, we've been able to create the Hall of Fame, which has only been going for a couple of years, which was on the back of. It was hard to do a Hall of Fame if you had this representation of some of your best athletes being called immortals, and you weren't able to nominate and call these immortals. So we work with the owners of Rugby League Week, and we're able to work something out and create this wonderful property called.
It's a big part of the game, and you never forget the guys that dug the well.
Absolutely,
they're the ones that you've got to remember. And I think what Rugby League Week did do well, what you talk about, Macca, was having just those 4 immortals in the 80s, and for so long, nothing was added to. No names or any names were added to that list. It wasn't till probably, how long ago would it be since we've added immortals to that list? Probably...
It's 3 years ago.
Is it only 3 years ago?
Yeah, it's only 3. Oh, well...
But before then, you know, I mean,
yes.
Artie and Wally and
That's right.
and Joey and those sort of guys came into it as extras. But up until 3 years ago, there was now 13, is there? Correct? 17.
I should probably know the answer to that.
If you put it together, yeah.
But I think it's 13.
Yeah, I think there's 13 too. But... that they did that branding, but so that's a tremendous thing that the NRL have done with that.
Oh, absolutely, and well, that's where I kind of first started. So how can we take ownership of these things and some of our internal functions? So then, over time, the way that progressed is I now look after the consumer side, the hospitality side, the events department, which is the front of house and actual delivery of the events, and the marketing team. So those 4 teams, I now look after those teams. I still at times I have to pinch myself that I'm actually doing that, but it's an extraordinary world that I operate in every single day. And essentially, think of it as all of those events that we run throughout the year. And I'm happy to go through the difference between what the clubs do and what the NRL does, because it's quite often an area that people get confused. And they're just from the outside looking in, it just looks like one big department and one big organisation. How do the 2 different parts work? And so what we look after is things like Magic Round and Origin and the Grand Final and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
the big events.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything you can do on game day. So you can sit at the top of level 6, which I have, which is a wonderful experience, getting to see players run around there 1 centimetre high. But you do get to go through the feeling of the day.
Just going back. So obviously you haven't been involved with the NRL with some of those halftime entertainments like the legendary Billy Idol. And the Optus collapsible television, they're just some of the most memorable halftime entertainment.
It's funny you say that. They may be in the distant past, but they come up very regularly.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Mate.
Let's make sure we don't create something like that again.
Yes.
So it is something that they do come up regularly. On how do we make sure we avoid those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's probably the low standard. Anything above that's just a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
That might be Tina Turner's coming back.
Oh, I hope so. Simply the best.
It's funny you say that. She's almost a recluse now. Like, so when
Really?
when the marketing campaign that happened
Last year?
for 2020, trying to get her involved was actually very difficult. So working through her manager and to get as much involvement as we could, which was very little.
Jimmy Barnes was outstanding though, mate.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the legends on how you tie it all together.
Yeah, that film clip. And it's a shame because obviously the NRL and so forth put a lot of time into that promotion with Jimmy Barnes and the song because it was the anniversary, and then the season sort of half turned to shit because of the COVID situation.
Oh, absolutely. It's extraordinary year.
Yeah, unbelievable, mate. And to get us back on the game, get that game back on so early, everyone involved from the top down at the NRL should be congratulated.
Oh, it was amazing. I think it was one of those extraordinary moments on how do you settle a date.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of people that were going through all the things you needed to do, and these are from everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
But no one just went, okay,
Yeah.
we need a lightning rod moment.
Yeah. I remember Peter Volandis, I heard him on radio, it was on Hadley or something like that, and he said, 15th of May or something, does that sound right?
15th was where he first started,
Yeah.
but then there was just a couple of
It
things.
went back
that
about
needed
2
done,
weeks or something?
and it went to the 28th
Yeah.
of May.
But like when he first said about it, we're probably talking April, early April when or March or something when COVID
That's right,
first kicked off.
And we were still trending up.
Yeah, and he said, we're going to be back on the 15th of May, and everyone's going, you got to be kidding. Like,
There's no chance.
There's no chance that this game's, if we play this season, we'll be surprised, but let alone playing on the 15th of May. But, mate, he pulled it all together.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
And, fantastic effort by everyone.
So you mentioned the split across the clubs and the venues and things like that. How does that all operate with the NRL and then the clubs?
Yeah, sure. It's one that often gets, like, for example, one of the most common questions I get is, and the last time I got this question was last Friday, which is why are the prices for club games so high? Like, why does it cost $35 to sit on the hill at Brookvale?
Yeah.
And which is a great question, and it's a very fair question. If you take a family, it gets up to around $70 or $80. So I can understand where this person was coming from. So the way maybe to think about the way the rights work and who owns what and who does and who's responsible for various parts of the game is almost think of it in 4 buckets. So you've got the NRL works on anything that's sort of the game level.
Yeah.
So anything linked to the premiership or something that's a representative type fixture like a state of origin, or it's something where we've created something like
Magic Round.
So we've created that, or you don't know who's going to ultimately be there. Say, for example, if you're a Dragons fan and you're in the Dragons,
Aren't we all?
No.
Oh, sorry.
But
Thought we all were.
if you're a Dragons fan, for example, you're probably feeling pretty safe. You don't have to worry about the finals. So what we do is
What are
we
you trying
make.
to say?
Mate, I'm not sure. I'm not making a prediction or anything, but. Yeah, good luck for the season. But what we make sure we work on is we'll work on the finals and the grand final because a club won't know if they're going to make it.
Yeah.
There's so much preparation needs to go into it, so the NRL will look after all of those.
I seen a meme the other day with the Dragons. Coach come out and said that we'll be there in September. We just don't know what bay we'll be sitting in. It hurt, but I did have a little chuckle.
Yep. Clearly, I would have laughed a lot louder.
Obviously, but yeah, I thought it was clever. But anyway,
yeah. So that's what. So we look after those sort of events, and we look after those sort of levels. So then, what we do is we create a premiership. It's been there since 1908, and we run the game. And what we do is we invite 16 teams. So 16 teams participate in the premiership. And as part of that participation arrangement, what we ask of all of the clubs is that you go run your 12 home games.
Yeah.
So from there, that then puts across to the clubs everything that's to do with a premiership home and away game. Everything's on the club.
So what you're saying is charging $35 to sit on the hill at Brookvale Oval, that comes back to Manly.
It comes back. That's the club's decision.
Yeah.
And they'll do that with all everything that's going on with their club.
Yeah, and they've got costs and security and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? So
they employ the players.
Yeah.
So they've got to go through all of the things that's going on. So they can sell anything linked to their club.
Yeah.
So the naming rights.
And they've only got 12 opportunities through the season to try and make money out of it.
Yep. And the other 2 buckets would be the players. So the players obviously own their own rights to their own intellectual property, which is more than fair enough. And a lot of the way that those rules work is governed by the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, which we hear so much on the news. But a lot of those rights are governed through that mechanism on how much they're paid for certain things and what they can and what belongs to their club and what belongs to the NRL in terms of how they promote the sport. And the last one is the venue itself.
Yeah.
So the clubs, majority of the clubs in the NRL definitely, that we don't own any of our venues. They're largely they are state-based assets. They're all owned by councils or governments.
Governments, yeah.
So, and a lot of the things that people get quite frustrated by is the prices of food and beverage and things like that. All of that is governed by the venue.
Yeah.
So you get these sort of the mix of rights and who owns what, and everyone making decisions that affects what they govern. But at times you get these confusion in amongst who's making these decisions, which can be I get it from a fan's point of view. Before I went to the NRL, it was like you'd always just say, hey, it's an NRL game, or therefore they're making all the decisions. But once you're on the inside, you can see where all of these mix of rights work.
I guess it's always the old cliche, like with the venues. Like you see some of these home games out at Homebush, and you could fire a shotgun through there and hit no one on some days, and you wonder why do you charge astronomical prices to get people's bums on seats where you could charge less and you get more people?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a catch-22, and I guess obviously the TV rights make it so much easier now because you can sit in the comfort of your own lounge.
Yep.
And the action that's put together with Channel 9 and Fox, you don't have to leave the comfort of your own lounge.
Oh, absolutely. It's extraordinary. And the way that both of those two parties shoot the game.
Oh.
I mean, it's just so tight around the ruck. It's wonderful. The way that they explain the game is fantastic. So they do an awesome job. But then that's kind of the natural thing that then the NRL, when we come to our events, that's what we're competing against.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, it's June and July, she's a little chilly outside. How do we convince you to come out to
Penrith Park on a Friday night or a Saturday night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the clubs are thinking about that with their membership and their casual fans. And we're thinking about it on the big games. So we're thinking about for Origins and things like that.
It's and as you said, the game is shot so well, and now with high definition, I can sit on the lounge at home. I don't have to line up to go to the toilet, or I know my pie's going to be cooked and it's not frozen in the middle still, and things like that.
Oh, don't you miss that?
That's
part of the charm.
That's exactly right. It adds to the atmosphere.
Yep.
That you and when the game's over, I can turn the telly off and go straight to bed rather than then have to get on the train and get home and things like that.
Watch the game in my jammies.
Yep, that's right.
So on Origin, how does your team? Is it from go to woe that your team looks after the whole lot?
Go to woe. So we think about
sponsorship, the whole lot.
The whole thing. So the NRL looks after that. So a different department looks after all of the sponsorship.
Yeah.
So they wrap in all the brands that are associated with the game and with State of Origin itself. But everything linked to putting the game on the park, that's outside of football, of course. The football department makes sure the athletes do what the athletes do. They manage all the referees and things like that. But everything that's to do with the fans, so everything that you want as a spectator, what we are, we're fans of the game, we'll find a way to make a product that suits you. So we have right down at that entry level. So this year we're at $49 is your price to come in as a fan and experience all the excitement that happens around those big games. Or if you want to sit there in your creature comforts and or you've got clients to entertain, we'll find a product somewhere in the middle that suits you.
Yeah.
And we've spent quite a bit of time over the last 4 or 5 years making sure there's plenty of choice for our fans.
Yeah, no, and it's a big jewel in the crown, mate, in the NRL crown, the State of Origin.
Absolutely.
It's just absolutely enormous.
Absolutely. And part of our other area, so marketing is all, I mean, everyone has a marketing area, but our focus in that is to elevate and explain and to convince you, as we were talking about just a few seconds ago, how to get you off your lounge.
Yeah.
So why is it better to come out to
come and see it live?
Come and see it and experience the unbelievable atmosphere that is Origin.
It is.
But have you guys seen an Origin at Brisbane, at Suncorp?
Negative.
No.
if there's one thing now, I've been to quite a few up there now. It's one of those unfortunate things I need to do, unfortunately, is go to Origin regularly.
Man of the people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you've got to see.
I might have to talk to someone from the NRL to see if I can get an invitation or something like that. I'm not sure, mate. But
you might know someone.
Maybe.
See what we can do. We might have to think about it with Brisbane. To experience an Origin at Brisbane, and you've got to do it the full hog. The first time I did it, I made sure I was in a New South Wales jersey on Caxton Street. You get a lot of interesting feedback from Queenslanders.
I'm sure you do.
Yep. So I enjoy that immensely. So and walking up and I've experienced the joy of Caxton Street after New South Wales had a victory.
Yeah, it was like a ghost town, I can imagine.
I was surprised I got through, actually. and I may or may not have had a beer or two, so I was obviously open-minded with my opinions to every Queenslander that was there. So
well, you've got to stay hydrated, Macca, too.
Absolutely. That's all elite athletes. You've got to maintain your fluid levels. And then I've also, unfortunately, been on the receiving end when you're coming through and Queensland have had a big win. I must admit the speed with which I walked up Caxton were very, very different.
You're on your toes?
And I just was looking down and I was going, thanks, fellas. Thanks for the feedback.
You're on your toes. There's obviously been an announcement just recently with State of Origin for 2021. So it's Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. Melbourne's got the first one this year.
That's right.
And what about ongoing? So 2022, 23, what's it look like for the NRL there?
Well, what we did a few years back, we were working with the New South Wales government to see what they could do around venues.
Yeah.
So what we were working very closely on if they could change the way that it would work with Stadium Australia. It's no longer ANZ Stadium, it's now Stadium Australia. Would they work to not completely knock the venue down, but to give it an enormous facelift? That's what we're working with the government with. So at that time, what we decided was to say, well, we can't have State of Origin being played in a construction site.
Correct.
So we'll minimise it. So rather than having that two games being played, we said, well, why don't we make it so that we already had one neutral venue in the cycle, being Melbourne, every 3 years. We went to, well, let's move it away. So what we'll do during this cycle of while Stadium Australia is being rebuilt, we'll make it so that there's effectively a neutral venue every single year.
Yeah.
As always, everything's so easy in retrospect. The government hasn't done that to Stadium Australia. And what we do when we do these placement strategies on where we're going to play this neutral Origin, we're doing that a number of years out.
Yeah.
And what we've found over that period, I mean, we went to Perth. Did you gentlemen go to Perth by any chance?
I have been to Perth, not for the rugby league though, but it's the Optus Stadium over there.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
It is unbelievable, isn't it?
What a stadium.
Yeah, we went over there. Dad and myself went over there to see some speedway over there. But mate, you drive past that Optus and it's absolutely enormous.
It's massive, and the technology that's in that venue is amazing. And we put Origin on in there, and it was extraordinary.
The light show on its own, Macca, is just...
it was amazing.
Yeah.
And the things that we're able to do. And you're basically leading with your biggest brand, and it's a great way to spread the gospel of rugby league.
It's a growth area over there too, mate, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, and what we found you get this beautiful halo effect, the ratings from rugby league after Origin was there lifted.
Really?
So you get all of these people just coming in and say, wow, what is this sport?
And it's probably outside the two main areas, like obviously Queensland and New South Wales are the two biggest areas for rugby league. So do you find it lifts in Perth and Melbourne and Adelaide, all the non-playing states type thing? Oh,
absolutely. So you're trying to, basically our theory is threefold, and we're seeing it come to pass wherever we take it, which is we want people to see the game and to attend it and experience, my goodness, how good is this game?
Yeah.
And then you get this flow-on effect of ratings, so people enjoying it and watching it as fans, participation. So you're getting more kids playing rugby league, which is absolutely, I mean, it's one of the things we stand for.
Yeah.
And then the third one, obviously, commercially, it's a fantastic outcome. So my team across those four teams that I was referring to, I mean, we have an absolute ball.
So this year it's at the MCG?
It's MCG number 1.
Yeah.
Then Brisbane number 2, and followed up by Stadium Australia game 3.
So a packed house, a packed MCG should be a sight to see.
Fingers crossed. We're working with Victoria Health just on the back of what's happened out of 2020. So a lot of all the COVID restrictions still all haven't gone away with the governments. So where we are at the moment...
Only in Victoria?
Victoria, no, we have a little bit in New South Wales and Queensland. You know how we've got similar restrictions still in cafes and restaurants, in how many they can get in. That crosses over into venues. So you do have to still work through on how you have some of those restrictions on how many can be in an enclosed space. So, but in Victoria, they're still out with their venues 50%. So at the moment, they're working through what does it look like over the next few months. So they're working closely with us, but we're only one.
So hopefully hopefully by the time of State of Origin, what's that, June 9?
June 9, that's right.
How's that for memory?
That was fantastic. I was very impressed. I had the same memory by checking my little sheet.
June 9. So hopefully by June 9, there's a
lifted
restrictions and numbers and
yeah, that's right. So what we were working with the government on was hopefully it'll be around that 75%.
Yeah,
that's what we're hoping. Fingers crossed, man, the way that everything's coming to pass and Australia's in a wonderful position. Hopefully there isn't any restrictions and we're able to see, like you're saying.
And that's 75% in all three states?
In New South Wales at the moment, no cap. So we can
good
sell
work,
through
Gladys.
all the general.
Good work, Gladys.
Oh, she's done a wonderful job.
Oh, how good.
Yep. So
she should probably be made an immortal, I guess, down the track.
She might be number 14.
Maybe. No, Gladys. First female immortal.
I think that's a sensational idea.
Can you float that?
Oh, I'll absolutely throw it into the mix.
Yeah.
I'll see what comes back.
Just get a show of hands.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like she's already got 3 votes, so she's doing quite well.
Yeah.
Just going back to the ratings from the back of the State of Origin, is that one of the reasons why it's played in the middle of the year? Because last year it was played at the end due to COVID and things like that, and people, this is a great idea, it should be at the end of the year, and then others were saying it should be still in the middle of the year. Is that one of the reasons from an NRL point of view that it's still in the middle of the year so you can go off the back of that?
Very much so. So the ratings in the middle of that's where people are accustomed to doing it. The athletes are still are in the middle of full training.
Yeah.
So they're playing
Don't
for their
change it,
club teams.
mate. Don't change it.
So it was thought about, do we do it at the end of the year? And ratings showed one thing to say, no, put it back in June, July. It's very hard for the athletes. I mean, some of those athletes that were playing Origin didn't make the semis.
Yeah.
So you think about it, they
got to stay tuned up.
Absolutely. They hadn't done anything for about 5 weeks, and training's not the same as playing.
Especially last year too, where they sort of started, then they had 6 or 8 weeks off in the middle of COVID, then they started again, and then if they didn't make the semis, they would have had another time off and then gone into State of Origin. So it would have been very tough stop-start type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very tough for them. And also the athletes did an extraordinary job last year. They were also in their bubbles.
Yeah.
So they also had to go through all of the restrictions. And it was with everything that was happening in and around Origin. Man, if there's one thing that we got very good at last year was moving people after they'd purchased a ticket, or the unfortunate thing of having to cancel events and do everything that flows from that, which what we do is it's refunds. We offer refunds out to general public ticket holders. But we had to learn how to do it last year on a mass scale, so unfortunately we're actually quite good at it now. But so there was a lot of that still happening in and around Origin at the end of last year. There was still border problems with South Australia, if you recall, so there was still a lot of difficulty for getting the athletes in and out. So it was quite an extraordinary period. But it was we worked out that it's still the right time for Origin is absolutely in that June, July period.
Yeah. Does the NRL and your team look after the All-Star game as well?
We did. We were the ones that delivered it up at Townsville, QCBS. It just naturally rolls off the tongue, that one, Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Though I think that's one of the all-time naming rights deals. I
think it's better than the old one. What was it? 1300 Smile Stadium?
Yeah, that's right. Owned by a dentist.
Yeah,
that was.
I think
that was another one. But that thankfully we don't do anything on tickets anymore. We'd have had to shrink that font down just to roll that one out. So that's why we would just refer to it as that very easy acronym QCBS. We put that one on, and it's a fantastic product, All Stars. It's one of I think it's the only event when we put it in different places. We talk more to the week leading into the event than the game itself.
Yeah.
So all of everything that happens in the community is the focus for us.
And that's obviously this year was at Townsville. Is that locked in to be anywhere a different venue next year?
We are looking for. It went so well up in Townsville. And it does do very well in Queensland.
Yeah.
We've had a number of different places knock on the door.
Been on the Gold Coast before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that it's the All-Stars, the Maori versus the Australian Indigenous, it creates a new element to it. So we've had an immense amount of interest coming from New Zealand So
Yeah.
to sit there, do
That's
we
a good
play?
idea.
I think it's a cracking idea.
Yeah, and I think they deserve it too.
So do I. I think that'd make it a really interesting concept, and it'll
I've
just
seen
grow it.
that because there hasn't been too much live sport with crowds and so forth, that All-Star game. Apparently the haka from that game went viral and so forth, like all over
Yeah,
all
it
over
was
the world.
on House of Highlights and that type of thing over in the States.
Over in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, just the haka before that game because it was so unusual, one, the sport, but two, to have a crowd there too.
Yep.
So obviously we're one of the first sports to have that crowd element.
Oh, absolutely, man. We had more than 20,000 there, which for the local fans, man, did you see the rain?
Yeah.
The rain slowed down during the game.
Seen Noah and his arc there at one stage.
Oh, absolutely. It was extraordinary. So to get that many people to come, you knew that people are so keen
Yeah,
to come
dedicated.
and see
And
live
they've
sport
travelled
again.
for days and kilometres to get there.
If you want to sit out in the stands in that sort of weather, you definitely want to see some footy.
Has there been any thought around, and the NBA All-Star weekend was just a week or so ago, has there been any thoughts around sort of expanding that concept in the NRL, where in the NBA they have the slam dunk contest and a skills test, and have there been something like a goal kicker and then a sprint and stuff like that?
It's funny you say that. That's we very much we looked at what we look at what all leading sports around the world, and I'm a baseball nut. So one of the things we're looking at in baseball is the home run derby.
Yes.
And when they introduced that, it was almost a novelty.
Yes.
Leading in now, the home run derby is almost the biggest thing of the All Stars weekend
Yeah.
because the coaches are so protective of their players and the athletes that are competing. So for you, if you're a pitcher, you don't get long up on the mound because they don't want to wear you out. You're not getting paid $18 million to pitch for the All Stars. You're doing that for the Yankees.
Yeah.
So we looked at different concepts. So we are looking at what are things that we could do in and around All Stars that we could do on the day before the game.
Yeah.
And you can tie in some cultural elements as well. It gives fans, particularly those that have travelled, something to do on the day prior.
Before.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See,
So-
I'm showing my age here, Macca. You may remember this, but back in the 70s, there was a thing called Leagueathon.
Leagueathon, mate.
Yeah.
I wasn't born then, so
You're lying now.
yes.
How dare you say that? But they had a Leagueathon.
Yep.
And it was something similar. So it was like different events for different players, and you found out who the fastest was over the 100, and they had a team doing the rope pull and all those type of things. So obviously different
Tug of war and
Yeah.
egg and spoon race, three-legged race, sack race, all of it.
But that's something to find out who's the fastest, or like Drew saying, who's the best goal kicker. You know what I mean? They all have a sharp shoot like they do in the basketball and that sort of
Absolutely.
stuff.
Another one we want to do is the fastest man.
Yeah.
So I think the fastest man would be superb. So it's something that we wanted to do, or we want to do at halftime on the grand final. The only thing sometimes, because
Well, there's always talk about who's the fastest in the game. Commentator, the NRL commentators would absolutely love it.
wouldn't they?
They would absolutely love it.
So yeah, that'd be something that one other thing that we looked to do to kick off the year, but we ended up doing something else was to basically get some of the players running on, and you'll track them on the LED that comes up on the side of the field. So what we want to do is tie in some of that with how could that work with, like for us elite athletes, we could sit there and be on the starting line, and we could give Josh and just show him just how we should run.
Yeah.
So Josh would only obviously be at the 50 while we've completed the 100 metres. But
yes.
Clearly. But that's some of the things that we've thought that what are other ways that we can demonstrate.
Shows how many kilometres and so forth he's run
Absolutely.
on the day and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
How fast the athletes are.
Yeah. Great idea.
But yeah, I think that'd be, and you see it, and as you said with the home run derby, and I know the slam dunk contest in the NBA is a huge thing. That how good's this? The guys jumped over two cars and dunked it and things like that. It could be something to look at.
I'm guessing.
absolutely.
I'm guessing from a Des Hasler point of view, we probably wouldn't get Tommy Turbo, like if it's pre-season.
Well, we could run it down in Manly Corso.
down the Corso.
Yes.
Probably wouldn't get Tommy in there early.
Maybe not, but he did show a good turn of pace up the course.
What about the kid that beat him?
Well, do you guys read the Batuta Advocate?
Yes.
Did you enjoy the article that said the Tigers offered a contract? I thought that was
It was very clever. Very clever.
How's your involvement and your team's involvement in the NRLW? Obviously, that's a growing spot in the game, and women's sport Australia-wide and worldwide is obviously growing a lot more. And in rugby league, the last few years has seen its own standalone competition. Does your team get involved in that?
We do indeed. We work very closely with our football department on this one.
Yeah.
So a lot of our emphasis is all about growing that as a game. I mean, women's origin, do you guys know the ratings of women's origin?
Oh, it's massive.
It is, I'll throw the number out, it's about 800,000 is
Wow.
what we'll get for a women's origin. I mean, that is an extraordinary
And is that
statistic.
the reason? I think
it's the leading
I
women's.
think in 2019
ratings.
it was at North Sydney Oval,
That's right.
and then at 2020 they had it.
We had with Sunshine Coast
Yeah.
last year at the
Yeah.
end of the year.
Yeah.
And we're looking where we put it this year. So
So it's a big draw card.
It's a big draw card. So we had it 2 years in a row at North Sydney Oval. The first year we almost filled it. The second year we should have gone somewhere else.
Turned it away. Turned people
Oh,
away.
absolutely. It was sold out.
They were
Yeah.
hanging out of the old tree there.
Yeah. Fig tree.
They were. I was down near that tree watching the game, and it was a fantastic atmosphere.
Yeah.
So on game day and everything that we throw into to bring the game to life in
Yeah.
terms of the way we present the game, the crowd just got so into it. It was fantastic.
It's a good-
and ratings alone.
It's a good crossover because obviously the sport I'm involved with, touch football. A lot of players that I've coached or had affiliation with our sport have gone up into that rugby league brand. I mean, like the likes of Matty Studden and Racine McGregor and Tamika Upton. Those they've all had that touch football background.
Fantastic.
So it's a good thing. It's a bit of a stepping stone, not only for the touch players, but they can see that they can go on to more exposure in the league as well.
Oh, absolutely. They've got Origin, then they can play international. But to answer your question on the NRLW, that's absolutely something we're working with football on. So where we were pre-COVID, we got to that we have 4 teams and they played the 3 games over the same period as the finals,
Yeah.
which, as I mentioned earlier, that's what we deliver. They're the games that we put on. So how do we make sure that we emphasise and grow the NRLW? And then obviously they have their grand final on grand final day. Where we were and where the path that we're getting back onto is the expansion beyond those 3 games.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is step it out so that we have 6 weeks. So the last 3 weeks of the premiership,
NRL,
of the
yeah,
men's
premiership,
premiership, so that we get a 6-week tournament for the
Yeah.
NRLW, and then looking about how many teams.
Yeah.
There's-
So I heard Andrew Abdo come out the other day and mention that there's a possible expansion in the NRLW. Is that for 2020, 2021?
I would guess that it would be more 2022.
Okay.
What we're looking to do is let's make it a longer tournament first, and then expand the teams.
Okay. So maybe this year it goes for 6. So they play each other twice or something this year?
That's what we're aiming to do.
For this year, yeah.
Yep.
And then next year look at expanding teams.
That's right. And the thing that we learned very closely with football, because obviously the commercial department's always super keen on everything and wants to grow everything super fast. So it's always like settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
But what we've worked very closely with football is the right speed to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's such a high impact sport,
Yeah.
as we all know. That's part of the thing that we love about the game, is that also is a very demanding in terms of when you're growing it. So let's not make sure, because with the amount of athletes that are available to play at that
Yeah.
elite level, let's just make sure we've got the right depth.
Yeah, I think the talent's there now too, mate. Maybe when it first kicked off. So we're going into the 3rd year of the NRLW, 4th year of the
I think
NRLW.
it's 4th year.
Fourth year. So possibly at the start, like 4 years ago, you wouldn't have said, "Hey, there's only enough talent for 4 teams," and maybe that was a stretch. But I think now with the exposure that it's had, yeah, the
without
depth is
question.
there. The depth is there.
Without question. And I think that absolutely applauds the strategy that was taken.
Yeah.
Don't put too many teams in the beginning and
Yeah.
have a subpar product. Put in the right amount, protect the athletes as
Yeah.
well, and then create a great product, and then you're able to expand naturally. So that's kind of the path that we've been on.
You also mentioned Magic Round. So for those that don't know, Magic Round is where all 8 games held over one weekend. It's usually at Brisbane. I believe it's going to be at Brisbane again,
That's right. A couple of more years.
which is a fantastic atmosphere. And I think it's good for, as you said, about the people with the All-Stars that travel, that people can travel to that location and see 8 games over 4 days and just enjoy the atmosphere as well. Is that something that you guys put on as well?
We'll have to get you into the marketing team. That's exactly how we put it. It's an amazing. Actually, It reminds me of a funny story. We get different feedback coming in from fans. You can imagine we have all sorts of colourful people support rugby league.
I've got this idea.
Yeah, I've got this crazy idea. You're never going to believe it. But we got one which was my favourite when the draw came out the first time we put on Magic Round 2019, and someone rang into our help desk and made a complaint that we'd printed it wrong and we had all 8 games at Suncorp. It's like, thank you for the feedback. But that's the design.
That is the plan.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, that is clever.
But it's one that we may or may not have borrowed from the UK Super League.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been accused of that regularly, and I can say for the record, yes.
We plagiarised it.
No, completely. We thought it was a great concept. We even had it as, it's one of those ones you'll have it in your own business with you have a project name it started off, let's just refer to it as Magic Round. It won't go any further. We'll end up giving it its own name. And then we announce it, Magic Round, coming to Brisbane. So it was one of those ones, but it's an extraordinary in how we got it to work. Because I mentioned earlier that all of the home and away games belong to the clubs.
Yeah.
So what we had to do was essentially we through the participation agreement give the grant to the clubs, and they put on their 12 home games. It's one of those ones where it's like, well, guys, we need 8 of you that we will buy those games back off you.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a funny situation on how that works. But the 8 clubs that we bought their home game, and they're now the ones on the left of the draw, the home games that they've included. Those clubs are fantastic. So the way that they've supported the concept and want it to grow.
I think the players enjoy it too.
It's the only time you get all the athletes in one place.
Yeah. And I see advertisements and emails and that come through already promoting. What round is Magic Round this year?
Round 10.
Round 10, so it's not quite halfway through the season, but there's already promotions before the season's kicked off talking about Magic Round and come and stay for the weekend and make a trip of it.
So how did you go, mate? That's what we promote. So it looks like as though we convinced you in. So whereabouts are you sitting?
Oh, I haven't bought a ticket at this stage. I've got to check my calendar.
Yeah, 14th, 16th of May is when Magic Round's on. So
well, that's my wife's birthday, so I couldn't think of a better place to take her.
Oh, that's romance.
She would dead set love to sit there for 8 games.
Wouldn't she?
Oh.
Why don't we take both of our wives? Because I just know that how much Jenny loves rugby league.
Yeah.
She would absolutely love to sit there and watch 8 games over 3 days.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything with more romance than
I think
that.
she's exhausted just sitting watching one St George game with me. I mean, well, she actually refuses to sit with me when St George are playing. But, I can imagine 8 games like that are just...
That's because of the language that you spiel out when you talk.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Things like well played, we're in front again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go, son.
Go.
Keep it up. You're doing a good job.
Yep.
It is a good concept that, and as you said, it gets all the athletes in one spot. Is that something similar to the Nines concept as well? Is the NRL involved in the Nines, or is that a standalone idea?
No, the Nines is the big difference between the two. The Nines is pre-season and you play as a tournament, and a lot of the way that we've tried to do that is to get up-and-coming players that are involved.
Yeah.
Because it's very early on in the season. You don't want a lot of activity for all of the stars because they end up playing a lot of content across the year, particularly if they play in the All-Stars, they play in the Nines, couple of trials, and then they're into a lot.
Origin, grand final.
The stars are the ones you want to see.
Correct.
So the Nines, we're really focused on that being that real up and coming sort of.
I like the idea with the Nines of being able to bring like an older player,
a legend,
like Freddie and those sort of. I think that's fantastic.
Entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Creates that entertainment value. Yeah. Whereas the key difference with Magic Round, it's a premiership round. So it's
2 points to play for.
Absolutely, you're playing for points. So everyone that's there, it's no different to any other home and away game. We're each of those teams, they're playing to win.
We mentioned a little bit about expansion. Is that come across the board within the NRL?
Has the expansion come up? I think our chairman has mentioned it once or twice.
Yeah.
And he's very keen to see something into Brisbane.
Yeah.
So the work that's being done, he referred to the business case as being prepared. We are having a bit of an involvement in how that business case will come together.
Yeah.
But it's very much based around how does it work for broadcast.
Yeah.
Because if we think about what Suncorp is, an extraordinary venue, and obviously with
that'd mean they're having a game there every week.
Exactly. So they'll have a home game, so that'll work really well for utilising a fantastic venue and a great stadium for playing rugby league.
Yeah.
But it's another key team in a big market, being the Queensland broadcast market. So it does create. That's why that focus is very much around that. Brisbane would be obviously a high candidate, but that doesn't preclude anyone else. But I'd say if you're putting odds down, the favourite would absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's supposed to be. I think the tenders go out in April or something, and there's a decision June or something this year. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's no guarantee that'll happen.
No,
there's a lot of categories that need to be satisfied in order to get there. But it's definitely a process that's the NRL is undertaking.
Is that exciting for your team to be able to possibly tap into a new market or a different market in the space of sponsorship and all that hospitality commercial side of things?
Absolutely. I think, as we spoke about earlier, that club will be able to, they'll own all those rights.
Yeah.
So that they get a lot of rights that come to them. They'll be the 17th club that'll be involved in the game. And then for them, they get, if you're going to start a club, and you wanted to where you're going to play your 12 home games
at Lang Park or Suncorp
Stadium,
yeah.
And what a wonderful place to sit there and start to do that. You've really, in terms of also finding sponsorship for your club.
Yeah,
I mean you've got one that's your competitor. If you're in Sydney, I mean there's so many.
Yeah, you got
teams.
nine different clubs to choose from.
I mean, you've got soccer teams you're competing against. There's so many different sports in and around.
It's saturated, mate, isn't it?
In Sydney, whereas Brisbane, it's a different story. So if you're starting a club, that would be a great place to do it.
Now, to wrap up the podcast, we ask our Fast 5 questions just to get to know you a little bit better. We've spoken a lot about NRL. Which NRL team do you support?
I think you may have picked up along the way that I'm an Eels fan. My tipping name is 35th Year Lucky. So this is definitely the year. But
86.
I wouldn't be relying on it. I have been saying it now since 1986.
86, yeah.
Who's just on who's your all-time Eels favourite?
I think I'd have to say Brett Kenny.
Yeah.
He's an extraordinary athlete, and I have had the good pleasure of meeting him. He's a very humble man. And I really enjoyed that opportunity. I got to meet him, and I think he's up there. But if you look at those players out of the 80s, I think you could almost be interchangeable. Mr. Perpetual Motion, again, another inspirational player of his time. He's got his statue there at Bankwest Stadium.
Yeah.
So I think there's a number of awesome players.
Well, even just that back line of Sterling, onto Kenny, onto the zip man, onto Growth. Great try.
Oh, memories. Great memories.
You talk about people from that area and that era and that team. We over the Christmas break we had a chance. We went down to Mick Cronin's pub at Gerringong. Mate, what a fantastic bloke.
Yep.
What a fantastic. He's just there, mate. He's behind the bar. He's just pulling schooners. But him and Dad were talking for ages, weren't they? They were just
good chat about the footy.
Mate, just in life in general, the area, what he's doing down there with the Gerringong Rugby League and the Gerringong Lions, he's just a tremendous bloke. But they don't make him like that anymore, unfortunately. But all those guys from that Parramatta era, from that time in the 80s, mate,
extraordinary.
Some great people and some great players.
Even Clayton and I are actually talking about Brett Kenny the other day, and there's some film on YouTube when he played over in England for Wigan.
85.
And in the Challenge Cup. And they're out on the field beforehand meeting the Queen and things like that, and he's just got his hands in his pocket of his jumper, and the commentator's saying, this Brett Kenny's come over from Australia, doesn't even look interested in playing. If he doesn't want to be, he should go back home.
Went on and won the Lance Todd.
Won like the man of the match and just blitzed them. But just before the game, it was just like, this is freezing cold, hands in the pocket. Yeah, just meeting the Queen. I was like, okay, I've met the Queen. Went on and killed him.
Oh, extraordinary.
So, mate, what is one of the things you would put on your bucket list?
I think one of the things that I would have on the list would to see the Red Sox play the Yankees at Fenway. That would be on my bucket list. I got to do a tour of Fenway in January a few years ago, and I think it was fair to say it was chilly up there in Boston. But just some of the history. If you're a baseball nut, there's so much history at that venue. It was extraordinary. I absolutely love being. It's got some of the shortest boundaries in terms of where you've got to hit for a home run. It's got some of the shortest in the game, but it's also just got that feel and so much history about how the game grew.
They do it good, the Yanks, mate, and particularly with the baseball. Just the atmosphere is tremendous over there in that sport.
It is extraordinary, and that's one thing I'd absolutely love to see, just to see the Yankees play.
I remember we went to the baseball, seen the Giants and the Yankees play, and it was quite funny that you get this massive foot-long hot dog, and then you can get all the extras on it and everything like that. And then about 10 years later, we went to Japan and we went to the baseball there, and there was people in the crowd eating noodles, bowls of noodles and things like that, like just the whole cultural thing. And we're used to the footy where you can get a pie and a hot dog and things like that. But then in America was the same. But then you go to Japan and they're up in the grandstand eating their bowl of noodles and things like that. Just catering for the locals.
For the locals.
What is your favourite movie quote?
I had a good think about this one because there's so many quotes suit so many different parts of what you're doing in your life. But I think my favourites all come from The Castle.
Oh, there's so many good ones.
There is so many good ones in The Castle.
What do you know about lead?
And when someone's really struggling with something, you always give them the Dennis Tenuto. Well done, you've got the vibe. Yeah, it's just the
Constitution.
What about when every time the photocopier plays up here, it's always F4? I've been F4.
And one of the ones that I do truly love is that line where he's sitting on there. You got the electricity buzzing, and he's the Serenity. I have that. You sit out at home at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and all you hear is the sound of guys that are frustrated supercar drivers doing their two strokes out on their whippersnippers, and you just get that buzzing non-stop for about 4 hours.
The Serenity?
The Serenity.
I always, the one with the kids when you're driving along and say, oh, see that? What? Oh, back there. When they're out on the boat. Oh, mate, there's so many good.
It'd have to be one of the movies that have got so many lines, and I don't know whether it's because it's an Aussie type of setup, but there's so many lines that are so appropriate or used in different conversation.
We haven't said the main one, I suppose.
Tell him he's dreaming.
Dreaming.
Tell him he's dreaming.
And even...
what do you call it, love? When she's...
when you have
results.
What do you call these, love?
Even when...
See that lattice up there? Fake.
Adds to the charm.
See that chimney up there? Fake.
Even when we're talking about buying something and 7 Eskies. What's he asking?
They're just part of the way that we all speak.
Yeah.
Set of jousting sticks.
Yeah.
What's he asking? Dreaming.
Son of Red Rocket.
That one always gets it right.
Yeah, it does. So, yes. Who is your favourite superhero and why?
Without question, Captain America. The size of the man crush is unbelievable on Captain America. He's an amazing person. He leads from the front, and he's absolutely fearless. So
bigger man crush than Brett Kenny?
Oh, much bigger.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And finally, if heaven does exist, what would God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I think the conversation would be short and sweet, and I think it would go along the lines of, "Are you lost, mate?"
Have you come along to the wrong place?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
That's, I think, what he'd say.
Good work. Macca, mate, thanks very much for giving us your time, coming along and having a chat today and talking about all things NRL behind the scenes. It's been a great insight to see how the production is all put together. Keep up the good work, mate, what you're doing there with yourself and the team at the NRL. It's a sport that's leads from the front. And for you to come in and have a chat to us about the prospects of what's happening, not only for 2021 but in the future, it's good to have a chat. So, mate, really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it is, mate. It's as a fan to understand the ins and outs of how it all operates. It's really interesting, and for those that, like myself, that didn't know of how the ticketing works and things like that, it's really good to get an understanding of that sort of thing. So we do appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it, mate. Take care. Thanks.
That wraps up the 29th episode and our chat with Shaun McMartin from the National Rugby League. Shaun mentions Magic Round in the NRL that will be kicking off next week, so be sure to check that out. And we've learned a lot about the NRL and even had an education in Aussie movie trivia. And if you're listening, this podcast is going straight to the pool room. If you have missed any previous episodes of the KRGS Doors podcast, you can download them from our website, www.krgsdoors.com.au/podcast, or on your favourite podcast player, search KRGS Doors. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. This also boosts our ranking and my ego. The other thing I suggest, if you've enjoyed the podcast, visit your favourite podcast player and leave a review or a rating. On our next episode, we speak to Andy Raymond. If you have watched TV, you would have heard Andy's voice. Following in his father's and uncle's footsteps, Andy has been a pit reporter for Channel 7 at Bathurst, along with working on rugby league and union, golf, tennis, swimming, and calling some of the biggest fights this country has seen. It's his voice that is etched in the minds of many, complementing the wonderful athletic achievements that make up many memorable moments in Australian sporting history. I've been your host, Drew Blackman, and you've been fantastic for tuning in today. As always, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Thanks. Till next time. The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au.